Hello everyone, my name is Jason and this is Netminder Review. Today is February 2nd and it is time for the next installment of our power ranking of the top 10 NHL goaltenders. Now, I haven't made a power ranking video since January 19th because of the All-Star break. Due to the All-Star break, there weren't a lot of games in the days shortly after January 19th, and I decided not to do one last week, so it would give us time to actually have some more games, more teams to play, more adjustment of statistics, more goaltending performances to go by. So now it's February 2nd, it's been 2 weeks since the last video, the last power ranking video, and so what I'm covering today will be including the games that were on January 19th, because those were not included in the last power ranking, and then all games from that point up until yesterday's games, February 1st. So the 3 games that were played today, February 2nd, are not reflected in anything that I'm talking about today. I'm going to start this week by doing something slightly different, something that I haven't done before, and I'm going to look at 3 categories of performances over the games since January 19th. Weak goals, stolen games, and shutouts. Now, let's start with weak goals. Weak goals, I know, is a very subjective term. Everybody's going to define weak goals a little bit differently. So I have my own opinion with each goal on whether or not it was a weak goal. I can't give you all of the criteria because some of that is just something I have to see. I will tell you that I almost never count deflections as weak goals. I almost never count a goal as a weak goal if I can clearly tell that the goaltender was screened. And if it was a breakaway, odd man rush, usually I wouldn't count a power play or overtime goal. However, on some occasions, a power play or overtime goal could be a weak goal. So, how many weak goals occurred over the time period from January 19th up until through yesterday? Well, let's take a look at them. There were 2 goalies who, in my opinion, had 2 weak goals in that time frame. One from the Boston Bruins was Yaroslav Halak, and one from the Chicago Blackhawks, Robin Leonard. Those are the only 2 goaltenders in the time frame that we're talking about that I credited with 2 weak goals. There were 6 other goals that I considered weak goals, each by individual goaltenders. So there was one by Alex Stalock from Minnesota, one by UC Saros from Nashville, one by Antti Raanta from Arizona, one by John Gibson from Anaheim, one by Brian Elliott from Philadelphia, and one by David Riddick from Calgary. Now let's move on from weak goals to stolen games. Now, each of these 3 categories do factor into the power ranking. I do not factor weak goals very highly because it is such a subjective judgment, and every goaltender, no matter how good he is going to let in a weak goal from time to time. Stolen games is a statistic that is of my own invention. And my definition for a stolen game is a game where a goaltender's team is outshot by 10 shots or more, and yet they still win. Now, I understand that those could be a lot of low-quality shots. Nevertheless, if a goalie's team is outshot by 10 shots or more and they still win, that's usually a pretty good indication that the goaltender had a pretty good game. So, stolen games since the 19th. There were 2 by Andrei Vasilevsky. From the Tampa Bay Lightning. There were 2 by Jacob Markstrom. Of the Vancouver Canucks, and they both happened just this week. Then we have, let's see, 6 others that were single performers, 1 stolen game in the time frame. Matt Murray from the Pittsburgh Penguins, Thomas Greiss from the New York Islanders, Thatcher Demko, also from the Vancouver Canucks. So keep in mind that the Vancouver Canucks did this 3 times since the 19th. Now, on the one hand, we could say, well, that's a really good mark for their goaltenders. It looks great from a goaltending standpoint. On the other hand, we could say that means there are 3 times since January 19th that the Vancouver Canucks have been outshot by 10 shots or more. That's not really something that you want to keep doing as a team. I mean, if your goaltenders continue to perform great, you can get away with that. And, of course, Vancouver has climbed the standings because of how well they've been playing lately. But if you continue to do that too long, you're probably going to get burned. Also, Tristan Jarry of the Pittsburgh Penguins, Tuukka Rask in his first game back from injury for the Boston Bruins, and Ryan Miller of the Anaheim Ducks. Alright, so we've covered weak goals, stolen games. Let's talk about shutouts. These are all of the shutouts that have occurred in the league since January 19th, not counting today, which of course there weren't any shutouts today. So let's take a look. Brian Elliott from the Philadelphia Flyers had 1 shutout, and interestingly enough, this would have been the only shutout since January 19th, except for the games that happened yesterday, because there were 4 shutouts yesterday. Carey Price from the Montreal Canadiens had a 29-shot shutout yesterday. Henrik Lundqvist of the New York Rangers got 1. Marc-Andre Fleury of the Vegas Knights, and Curtis McElhinney of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Since January 19th, these are your top performances and maybe not so great moments. And so now that we've got that out of the way, and I wanted to share that information with you because I'm keeping track of it because it factors into the power ranking. I thought you might find it interesting, but let's move on from this to the power ranking itself. Alright, so let's take a look at the power ranking itself. Over here on this side of the board, here's my pointer. Over here on this side of the board, we've got the January 19th power ranking, starting at number 10, going up to number 1. Alright, so we're going to dig into what the power ranking looks like this week, and I'll have some comments on some of the players on the power ranking this week as I go along. So at number 10, moving down 3 spots, is Yaroslav Halak of the Boston Bruins. Now, what you're going to find is the reason that Halak moves down is a little bit because of his play, but also because of some people who just jumped up ahead of him, which I'll talk about whenever I get to them. Number 9 this week, moving down 1 spot, is Carey Price. Carey Price of the Montreal Canadiens. And again, Carey Price is affected in part by some guys who are on the power ranking this week that jumped onto the board that weren't there last week. Now, if you've watched my previous power rankings, you know that I am grading each of these goaltenders on a number of factors and coming up with a point total for them, and then they end up where they are on the board based on that point total. So Yaroslav Halak this week receives 27 points, and so does Carey Price. However, the reason that I ranked Carey Price just above Halak is because Carey Price had that shutout yesterday, and so that was the deciding factor on who was going to be 9th and who was going to be 10th. In a sense, you could really look at it as a tie for 9th place. Number 8 on the list here this week, let's see, moving up 2 spots is Thomas Greiss. And that's really due mainly because his numbers are just really good for the season. And Thomas Greiss received 35 points. Number 7 this week, making his way onto the power ranking for the first time after an extremely strong week from the Vancouver Canucks, Jacob Markstrom. Now, Markstrom received 35 points also, just like Thomas Greiss did, but Markstrom had a very, very strong week. So Markstrom has won 4 of his last 5 games. He's had a .950 save percentage or better in 3 of those games. And as I stated in the earlier part of my video, he had 2 stolen games this week, where Vancouver allowed 10 or more shots more than they had, and they were still able to pull out a victory. Markstrom has been playing extremely well, and I believe very much deserves to be on this board. Number 6 is Andrei Vasilevskiy of the Tampa Bay Lightning. And Vasilevskiy has 38 points. Now, why did Vasilevskiy move from 4th on the 19th to 6th? Really almost entirely because of the goaltenders who have made it onto the board ahead of him for the first time, or in one case, wasn't on it on January 19th due to injury. Now, Vasilevskiy has won, let's see here. Vasilevskiy has played very well lately. I believe he's won 4 of his last 5. Don't quote me on that. I thought I had it written down, but I didn't. However, he still ranks 10th in goals against average in the league among goaltenders that have played 20 games or more and are not currently injured. And he ranks 15th in save percentage among goaltenders who have played 20 games or more and are not injured. So he's certainly playing well. Tampa Bay's winning a lot of games, and he's in net for most of them. I'm sure, I mean, he definitely deserves to be on the board. One could make an argument he deserves to be higher. But Tampa Bay has scored 186 goals. That's the 3rd most in the NHL. So he's benefiting from an extremely high-powered offense. Now, I'm not saying he's not good. He's fantastic. He won the Vezina last year, and he definitely deserves to be on the board. But whether or not he deserves to be higher, in my opinion, he deserves to be 6th. So that's where I've got him. Now, right ahead of him at 5th is Ben Bishop. Now, Bishop falls from 3rd last week. And if Vasilevskiy and Bishop continue to play the way that they've been playing over the last week and a half, then the likelihood is next week they'll swap places, or maybe one will go more in one direction than the other. Ben Bishop has only won 2 of his last 5 games. Now, Dallas can't score goals. Dallas's offense is really, really not good. And yet still they're holding on, scratching on to a playoff position. and Ben Bishop is a huge part of why that is the case. I don't want to punish Ben Bishop too much for wins and losses when he's really in the exact opposite situation of Andrei Vasilevsky. Vasilevsky's on a team that's scoring a ton of goals. Bishop's on a team that can't score goals. And so, Bishop can't be the offense too. So I'm not going to punish him too much, but he does drop from 3rd to 5th. Now, you'll notice a couple people who are gone along the way. Robin Lehner, Connor Hellebuyck, Anton Khudobin. Why? Lehner is bumped off mainly by virtue of the fact that other people have jumped ahead of him. Hellebuyck, while I know he had that victory against the Blues, he's not played as well lately. And, I mean, yes, it's his fault to an extent, but at the same time, the Jets defensively are really bad. But Hellebuyck's numbers lately have been bad, along with the Jets' defense being really bad. I just can't justify keeping him up this high. Also, Khudobin, why did I drop him off? He's just not playing. Ben Bishop is playing the bulk of those games, and I really want this to be reflective of the 10 goaltenders that are playing the best right now and have been good throughout the season. Khudobin's been good throughout the season, but he's not playing right now, not to any significant degree, so I just don't see any reason to have him on the board. Number 4 this week is Samsonov from the Washington Capitals, Ilya Samsonov. Now, this is one of the guys who's on the board for the first time because he's just finally played enough games. He hadn't played enough games. Samsonov he won 5 in a row before today. As I stated, today's games are not reflected in these numbers. I'm pretty sure he was in net for Washington today, and I know that they lost to Pittsburgh. But up until today, he had won 5 games in a row, and he finally hit the number of games that I wanted a goalie to have played to be on this board. Now, going back to Ben Bishop, according to my point system, Bishop has 45 points. And Ilya Samsonov has 54 points. A big jump there from Bishop to Samsonov. Okay, next up, number 3, we have Tuukka Rask. Of the Boston Bruins, Tuukka Rask with 59 points. And Tuukka Rask had been out with injury. He was on the January 12th power ranking. I did not have him on the January 19th power ranking, as you can see here, because of injury. He came back and stopped 37 of 38 shots against Columbus. And he looks every bit as good or better than he did before he left with injury. So Tuukka Rask jumps right back onto the board now that he's back, all the way up to number 3. And that's why some of these other guys get bumped down, because of guys like Rask being on the board again, Samsonov being on the board for the first time, and Markstrom being on the board for the first time. Next up at number 2, we've got Tristan Jarry. Of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and Tristan Jarry has 62 points. Tristan Jarry has won 3 of his last 5 games that he's played in and allowed 3 or fewer goals in each of them. And of course the Penguins just keep on moving to the top of the standings, keep on winning games. I know that Matt Murray was in goal today, and let me take a moment to mention Matt Murray. Matt Murray's playing a lot better lately. So the Penguins now are looking at a situation where they're not only scoring goals and playing fantastically, but now they've got potentially Tristan Jarry and Matt Murray both playing well. If Matt Murray can get back in form like it looks like he has been lately, then the Penguins are going to be a real threat, because it won't matter who they put in goal. They're going to be very, very difficult to beat. So number 1 this week, as was last week, from the Columbus Blue Jackets, Elvis Merzlikins. So Merzlikins has 72 points, and Merzlikins has been playing fantastically. Columbus has been on fire, and they're really a force to be reckoned with right now. They're I believe holding on to a playoff spot at this moment, and while the whole team is playing great, Merzlikins is a huge part of that. And I can honestly say that I feel a little bad for whoever meets Columbus in the first round of the playoffs, because I have a feeling it's going to be a difficult time for whoever that team is. And I have to say personally, I would really like to see them do well. I'm a big fan of John Tortorella. I know some people can't stand him, some people like him. I'm one of the ones who likes him. I'd like to see Columbus go deep in the playoffs, and I'd like to see some success for John Tortorella. Anyway, that's the power ranking for February 2nd. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I really appreciate you watching the video. Please hit like. Please subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate that. Share it with your friends also on social media. Thank you so much for watching, and have an awesome day.